everyone.
Good morning.
Well, a man took his son. Hello, everybody on Facebook. Thank you, Sandra, for reminding me. Facebook Live, thank you for joining us today. A man took his son out on a boat to go fishing. First time they'd been out. So after about 30 minutes, the son asked him, Daddy, how does the boat stay afloat? Father responded, don't rightly know, son. So a couple more minutes passed, and the son said, Dad, how does the fish breathe underwater? And the dad said, don't rightly know, son. And so a couple more minutes passed, and the son said, Dad, how come the sky is so blue? And the dad said, don't rightly know, son. And so the son was thinking, well, I don't want to keep asking my dad questions because he might get upset. And so he says, Dad, I hope you don't mind me asking so many questions. And the dad said, well, no, son, I don't mind at all. How is she going to learn anything?
I don't rightly know, Dad.
Well, today's lesson is about freedom, and of course, Thursday being the 4th of July, that was the idea, I thought. But we're going to look at freedom a little bit different today, because today I want us to have a freedom of our mind, which we talk about a lot, but I want to try to be a little bit more specific today on what it is in unity that we really, really teach, and that really is the freedom of the mind, to be free to think of only Christ's thoughts. And so today, I just want to go over a few things with you about that. Many consider freedom to be the ease of access to places and things, right? I mean, when we talk about Independence Day, July 4th, which actually, anyway, I'm sure that in the internet y'all see the different things about the Independence Day and the Declaration of Independence, and saw this week that the Declaration of Independence actually was declared on July 2nd, but they didn't get it all out to the different places till the 4th, and so that's what they decided to go with, is the 4th. Anyway, so whether you just decide to, if you knew that fact, which if I did, I forgot it, and celebrate it on the 2nd, that's fine, or 4th, whatever, or 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or all month, I don't care. But freedom is an access that we usually think of as far as our personal ability to move around and do what we want, which in this country we're blessed because we can do that pretty much, can't we? But not all countries in the world allow you to do that. True freedom, though, is a state of mind, and that's what we teach in unity. And the reason we teach that is because it's true, and it's not a new idea, but it's still not well. Not only sometimes it's not well received, but it's not well used or not well implemented is the word I'm looking for, implemented in the world today yet. I mean, we can see it in a lot of places, even in this country, as far as us having the freedom of access. There's still a lot of things that prevent our freedom. But this is part of the definition of freedom that Charles Fillmore has in the Revealing Word. It says, the quality or state of being without thought or restraint, bondage, limitation, or repression. Now remember, the quality of state or state of being without thought of restraint, bondage, limitation, or repression. Having a sense of complete well-being. It is a result of regulating one's life according to principle, not according to what anyone else may think, say, or do. That last part is true, but it's not something that we're at yet, really, I don't think. I think that the first part is really what we need to control, what we need to think about. You know, I've used this example before. Many people have been prisoners of war or gone through some torture or some abuse, and you can see how different people in the same type of situation have come out differently, right? I mean, some people have come out, and I'll use, well, I don't want to get a political figure, but I'm trying to think of somebody, anyway. Huh?
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela's a good one. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. You know, he came out, and you know, I'm sure he had some animosity, but he came out for the most part and portrayed himself outwardly and acted as such, as someone that didn't hold a lot against those people that were very, very mean to him, right? Locked him up for what? He was in jail for 50 years or something like that, right? Long time. Huh? 27 is all? Well, I thought, anyway, it doesn't make a difference. Too long. Yeah, it felt like 50. 27 felt like 50. But anyway, to turn that kind of around, because it wasn't like he was just thrown in jail. I mean, he was beaten too. There's a lot of things that happened to him in jail. He could have held a lot of people, oh, you owe me for this, right? When he got through with that. But he didn't really. What he did was he knew that he was a symbol, an example of what something could be. And his teachings that he was teaching before he went in jail were the same when he came out. And that is what we're talking about. Not letting other people, whatever they do, either outwardly or to you, have control over what he's thinking about what life can be and what life really is. It's a state of mind that can overcome anything, even physical abuse, which is hard to see sometimes. It's really hard to see sometimes. I think sometimes even it's harder, at least for me, and I know a lot of the Unity people, it's harder for me to see it when somebody else is abused, how they can overcome that instead of myself. Although I have to be able to do that in order for me to be able to be purer at the whole idea of forgiving with myself, right? And it's more than forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is one thing, but you know that word is kind of thrown out, and sometimes I think we get flippant with it as far as meaning forgiveness, like I'm not going to act any way against that person anymore. But the more important thing is I'm not going to think ill toward that person anymore, which is a lot tougher act to follow, isn't it? Than just I'm not going to do anything to that person anymore or back at that person, right? So, we have a lot of that, though, going on right now still, don't we? As far as, oh, you did something to me 25 years ago, and I still remember it, and the person probably doesn't even remember it at all. Yeah, or might be dead, whatever. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, interesting. So this signifies that. Many things can happen in our physical life that can prevent us from having freedom, and I talked about that a second ago, but I want to get a little bit more specific on it. And some of these things are debt, discrimination. Well, let's start with the first one, debt. How many people have been in debt, or still in debt, or whatever? How many people have ever borrowed money from somebody or something? Yeah. I mean, when you're doing that, sometimes it goes just as planned and you can make the payments and everything, but I don't want you to raise your hand on this. Sometimes some people get in a situation where, gosh darn it, I can't make that payment this month. Then the agreement kind of shifts a little bit, doesn't it? Usually, not all the time, but sometimes what will happen, a lot of the times what will happen is the person that is owed the money starts, well, what's the deal? How come you're not paying me? And it could be, honestly, that the person that owed the money, borrowed the money, is, just, I need some time to do it, I'll get it back up, and we'll get done with it. And that happens sometimes, quite often. But sometimes it could be that the guy that is owed, or the person that is owed the money, is correct in thinking the guy's a bum and's trying to rip me off, right? But there is different, I love what another Unity minister used to say, and I'm not going to be able to say it verbatim, but he used to have this tagline on all his emails. He said, treat everyone nice because they're all going through their own experience. Something similar to that. And that's true. I mean, we all have our own experience of what we're going through, and it could be financial, it could be something else. But if we don't have the right frame of thought on whatever we're doing, we're not going to get out of where we're at right now. And so that could be anywhere in the gambit of where you're at. Whether you're in debt and everything's going cool, whether you're in debt and everything's not going good, or you're out of debt, you don't owe anybody any money, and you are trying to save, or whatever you're trying to do. Everything is in that realm of where I'm at right now, where I want to be, if there are different things, which usually they are, and that's not wrong to be different things, where you're at right now and think of where you want to be. Because if you're thinking of somewhere else, then your mind is still growing, and you want to do that. Okay, so it's not bad, but sometimes it's not. It's like here's even, and I may be down here. Okay, But sometimes it may be here's even and I'm up here, but I still should be yearning for up here, right? Okay, you get it? There's nothing wrong with that. Not along our spiritual journey, obviously, we want to continue to improve. The next one is discrimination. I think most people, I don't know about most people, but I don't know. I was going to say most people have experienced discrimination, but I don't know that that's true. So anyway, those that have, though, which I'll include myself because I have the opportunity of two different things. And regrettably, some people choose to, when they're discriminated against, choose whoever discriminated against them and lump them with everybody that looks like that person. Wrong. You're never going to get over it if you do that. And then what you're doing is discriminating against somebody else that you don't even know what they're doing. Silly. It's kind of like we saw a bumper sticker the other day. It said, and we were surprised. It was from somebody that was we thought didn't do that. But what was it? It was.
If you discriminate.
Oh, you got your mic on still.
Oh.
If you, no, it wasn't. Oh, if you're prejudiced, F you. Which, okay, I kind of agree with that statement, but, isn't that kind of doing the same thing back? It's kind of like, oh, I hate people who hate. Yes, that's what it is.
What?
See, the F stands for forgive. That's what it should have stood for. You're right. Forgive you. I love that, Neil. That's great. I love that.
Well,
See?
it had an F and then it had stars.
Yeah,
And
but
then
look where the
Y,
line goes in
star.
interpretation.
You
Yes.
need more
See it
stars
as
for
forgive,
forgive.
we see it instead the other way.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it had the.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
Oh, you just saw that.
anyway, it never works to be the same thing. Never works to turn into the person that you don't like their action. It never works. All you're doing is perpetuating that action and that thought, and the thought has to change. And see, one of the wonderful things that Fillmore did, Charles Fillmore, one of the founders of Unity, was change a lot of people's thinking about how things work. Not that he had anything new, because he said it was nothing new. It was the same as what Jesus was teaching. It's the same as a lot of prophets have taught throughout the history of humanity. But he was able to, like Jesus, in my mind, change probably more, actually, because the world was bigger and there's more people in it, change more minds of how to think. Now, sometimes, though, even if we get the right thought and we think, oh, yeah, this is what I'm going to start doing, and do what Neil did, change it around to something positive, something that is her Christ consciousness, then we still have, if we're here and there's midpoint, and we still have to want to be here, or else we can drop back down. We have to not necessarily monitor our thoughts, but it is a little bit, but know where we're coming from when we think about something. And that's what it does. Debt, discrimination, or anything like that, what it does is it doesn't take our power. We give our power to it if we fall into that trap. We give our power to it. It's like having animosity towards somebody that they don't even have any toward you or don't even know about it. Who's that hurting? It's hurting me, not them. This is the other part of his definition of freedom. We can never know the full meaning of freedom until we abide in the Christ consciousness. That's what I'm talking about. Without prayer and spiritual meditation, there can be no concept of spiritual freedom and therefore no demonstration of it. So in other words, if we don't pray and meditate, if we don't take the time to set our mind right, then there can be no expression of that out here. Because if we set our mind right, first of all, our world is going to change with that expression. And if enough people do that, the whole world will change with that expression. See, there's not going to be a person that discriminates in a crowd that has everybody that doesn't do that. They aren't going to be able to do that, first of all, and then they're going to find out that that's not the way to do it anyway. The idea of discrimination or anything, or prejudice more like, or anything like along those lines is an idea that is someone not seeing the love in the situation. That's all it is. And it's not necessarily a lack of love, but it's a block that we put on seeing the love. Okay, and it is gained only through spiritual development gained in long hours of communion with God in the silence. Liberation from bondage comes as we seek first the perfect mind of Christ. And from John 8:36, he relates it to, if therefore the Son shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. And so that Bible quote, is used by a lot of people in Christianity as saying as the idea of being saved by the blood of Christ, but that's not what it says here, and that's not what he's correctly interpreting it, just like Jesus correctly interpreted the Old Testament into the new understanding, into the broader understanding. Why was Jesus not accepted as the Messiah? Because first of all, he didn't bring the Jews out of bondage, and second of all, what happened? He didn't bring them up to heaven. But third, and all three of these are equally in importance, is he included Gentiles, other people than Jewish people, that have this same Christ spirit within them. How can that be? That's not possible. But it is possible. Everybody. And see, that's where prejudice and things gets into things like that, is we look at people differently because they look outwardly differently. Well, it makes no difference. And that's always been funny to me, because it doesn't make no difference what color your skin is. In that same color of skin, everybody looks different. Don't they?
Yeah.
So why does the color of a skin make a difference between... anyway, no, I'm not going to go there. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't mean that I'm mad at people that feel that way. It's just that it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So, let's continue. Religion has its history of taking people's freedom too, doesn't it? Yeah. And so, one of our big responsibilities as unity people especially, but as churchgoers in general, is to dispel that doesn't mean that all religion is bad. Or all church is bad, right? Churches, for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, are on decline in attendance. Why is that? It's because of this. We've been beat up in some way or some fashion by the idea of church and what they teach. I was listening to a minister, world-renowned minister actually, the other day. I listen to him every so often, and he, is usually very, very inspiring. But he had this one service the other day entitled "The Power of the Blood," and he did go down that road. He did go down that road, the power of the blood, and the reason that and this was actually factual. The Jewish people had animal sacrifices, the best of the best, and then they ended up with human sacrifice being Jesus coming to be the last sacrifice as far as Christianity is concerned. Then I saw this sign too the other day, and I'm glad that you're here today, Jim.
Yeah, I see.
If God is your co-pilot, switch seats. Which a lot of people say, oh, that sounds cool, that's a good idea. But they haven't been flying. They aren't a pilot if they know that. Because if there's two people well, there can be more in big planes, but two people only flying the plane, they're both co-pilots. The only difference is the one on the left seat is in charge of that flight, but that doesn't necessarily, you didn't put it on there. Huh? Did you put PIC on there? Okay, no, you didn't. But there's always an understanding between those two pilots who's the PIC, which stands for pilot in command of that flight. So 90% of the time, the PIC is going to be in the left seat because he's flying the plane.
He sends me a Word document with what he wants on it. He put PIC of a pilot in the plane. I thought he meant picture.
Oh, picture. I thought I put Terry.
I don't
I'm
know
sorry.
what PIC is.
Well, there you go. See, And that's okay. You wouldn't know, would you, Jim? Unless you've flown, or unless you knew. So, in fact, Jim might have not. What's he talking about? He might have said that because he's done it for so long and so old. But that's what, just pilots can understand that.
Well, I gave you a
There's a
picture of the pilot.
PIC in the plane. Between those co-pilots. The co-pilots, though, are equal. When you get the bigger planes, you're what they call type rated. And that means you have had to serve so many hours in that specific plane. Not that one plane, but that type, 737. That type of plane, a 737. You've had to add a couple hundred probably hours of that. Depends on the plane. But anyway, of training in that plane. So, when that happens, like if somebody got newly trained in a 737 we're using, and the PIC was actually maybe in the right seat because wanting the new guy coming in and actually had taken the flight in the left seat because the left seat flies. But the right seat can. It's just that the left seat is usually the PIC. Anyway, so what I'm getting to with all that is to know that whoever put this up there wasn't a pilot, and then also that the idea of God being your co-pilot, because really that's one of the phrases that Unity made famous a long time ago. God is my co-pilot, made labels and stuff. But anyway, heck, that was in the 60s. But and this is hard for some people outside of Unity, especially to understand that God is in equal partnership with you during this life. Because this is an easier part for people to understand, is that God, you are the expression in human form of God. God, Jerry, I can say, and I'm sorry to use the example, Jerry, but I like you, so hope you don't take offense. But Jerry is the expression of God, and I can say that, but a lot of people can't look or won't look at Jerry and say, there's God walking down the street. Right? Just out of the blue, they won't say that because they don't understand that. I can say that. There's there's God sitting down in the seat right there.
I like that.
He just changed his name.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Jerry God. I like it. But the understanding, the thought of, and the reason we want to be clear on God as your co-pilot is the idea that when we come to that debt that we can't pay, or whatever it is that we've got something in our mind that is a lack idea, that we think of God is my co-pilot. Is this too big for God to handle? I don't know of anything that's too big for God to handle. And if I'm God's expression here on earth, then God will show me a way. Francie and I came here, 7 years ago? And I could have swore, I did swear, not cuss words, but I told people, before I left the village, we'll be, probably moved on by then, because we'll have that new campus built. There'll be a full house on the new big church, and let someone else take over from there, and we'll go do that somewhere else. Well, it hadn't happened, but that doesn't mean that God isn't my co-pilot. It means that I haven't figured out how to let God do the work yet, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just still a work in progress. I don't want to hear any of your agreements on that.
I just want to.
Excuse me. This Independence Day, I want us to celebrate our outer freedom in the land we live, because, like I said, there is places that aren't that way. And I'm not saying this to be political, but I'm saying this for us to understand that we need to include everyone. We cannot have a world that works for all unless we include everyone. So I was so happy, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, because I just read it this morning. I haven't been up on my news like I usually am, but I saw that the President of the United States went to North Korea. I mean, it's only a few steps. It was symbolic is all it was. It wasn't a big deal as far as, the physical act of it. But that place has not been entered into forever. And it reminded me of, and I'm kind of showing my age this way, but a lot of people didn't like this guy either, but Nixon with China.
Right.
I really, the other stuff the negative, here's why I can do this, is because I'm really good at forgetting the negative stuff that people do. I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
I've always been good at that. forgetting the negative stuff and looking at the positive. Our relationship with China back then was horrible. And Nixon our president of the United States at that time broke the ice and went over there and made it a relationship instead of a non-relationship. And I tell you, Bill was telling me something about some studies on UFOs that he was watching this last week. And you know what? If there's UFOs out there, how could we even talk to people from another planet right now? We're not united ourselves. We aren't, are we? Why can't we get along with everybody in the world? It's because we don't treat each other the same, do we? And we have to start treating each other the same. The only way that we can do that is see the Christ consciousness in others. But in order to do that, we have to see it in ourselves. And Jerry just did it. He's changing his middle name to God. Or adding one. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I like the idea. How about changing your middle name to God? We can have a service right here. I can get approved by the city council or whoever I need to be to change names. You're a lawyer, you might be able to do it right now anyway without me. I love it. Celebrate those, though, this 4th of July. Celebrate the outer freedoms that we have, but also bless those that maybe don't have those. Put that thought out there for them. And also bless our own mind to think about celebrating our thoughts being free. Because anything that we are thinking that is not our that does not come from our Christ consciousness is not using our co-pilot of God. It's using all of our personality, which does not translate into a world that works for all. You know, a lot of people want to be, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a millionaire. Now that's not enough money, so you have to add to that. But when you want to do that, that's fine. And yet, don't do it at thinking that I have to get this because either that's how much with a limit on what I'm trying to get to is thinking that there's a limit on the amount out there. Because first of all, if I was growing up thinking that I wanted to be a millionaire and now it's not enough money, I hope there wasn't a limit back then and it hadn't raised, right? I think anybody who wants to put a limit on money, especially in the United States, needs to take a tour of one of those Federal Reserves where they print money. And they'll give you, I think for $1 or something, it's really cheap, give you $1 million worth of shredded money at the end if you want to take it. They're cutting that stuff up and printing it as fast as they can. So your $1 million isn't going to stop them one bit from doing anything. Your $1 billion. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen where we're going to all be billionaires or trillionaires? That asteroid that's supposed to hit?
Oh, yeah.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it's been on, it's full of gold and platinum.
Oh, really?
And metals, and they say that everybody's going to be rich. But then the one that's really true says we're all going to be poor because then gold's not going to be worth anything.
Why? Oh, because it would be so prevalent.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah,
Well, it's funny though. So if an asteroid hits us, though, how are we going to survive? Well, hopefully we'll stay in this orbit. But anyway, so our thoughts are key to what our life is like, and so hopefully we'll stay in that Christ consciousness. Each day we live in our Christ consciousness, though, is Independence Day for us. Because we can live and not be worried about the bills or somebody else's thoughts of us or thinking that we're going to send out some negative thoughts ourselves. And then we do, you know, if something happens that you get into that negative thinking for whatever reason, just stop it. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just say, hey, that's not my true Christ consciousness. That's not me allowing my co-pilot to be the PIC. You know that word, or that abbreviation now. What you using? Okay, this song that we're going to play is something I can't believe that it is funny. It's like the red Volkswagen idea for me. Once you see something, or think of something, you'll see it a lot. This song, when I went and got it, it already had 85 million hits on it, but I had not really heard it before. And this week I heard it probably 4 or 5 times out in the shopping or whatever. It's crazy, isn't it, Francie? We heard
Yes.
it. I mean, you all have heard it
We
probably
were at
before.
Walmart, they
If
were
you
playing
haven't, though, enjoy it because it's pretty cool. It's a new one by Farrell. He's got a good song on freedom, right? So we'll see y'all from Facebook next week. Love you.